Welcome to another episode of the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. Once again, I'll be your host of the Mysterious World. And let's go ahead and get right into it. Today, I researched earthquake weapons. Now, I was thinking about doing this anyway, and it's what really pushed me over the edge to do this. I follow Darren Beatty. He's the publisher of Revolver magazine, revolver.com website. And he's an excellent in-depth reporter, gets into some speculation, but still he's very educated and smart. And everybody really appreciates his contribution to the freedom movement and the don't believe the first thing that you hear camp, for sure. So, of course, the first place I checked, I just did a random Google search, and then I used Bing. Bing is not broken. Google's definitely broken. I still don't understand 100% why Bing is not broken, knowing what we know about Bill Gates, but I also know that he stepped away from being the CEO, so perhaps there's some people at Bing that just thought, hey, being honest might be a selling point. Not manipulating the algorithm might help us out a little bit. And I think it is, because we're all starting to use it. And there's other ones too. There's the start page, all that, powered by Google, whatever. So just to make sure, I checked with mainstream media and they said, don't worry about it. Fact check. They use that. Fact check by Eleanor McCrary is today's fact checker on this. Well, she came out and said this on February 15th, 2023. So a year ago, just to make sure, if you thought that earthquake in Turkey was suspicious, yeah, don't worry about it. It's not. Our rating is false. Okay. On February 7th, Facebook post, direct link, features a video compilation of destruction purportedly. See, they don't even accept your footage. So why even to argue with these people? It's like somebody posted a picture of the guy that was behind the Trans Day of Visibility, and he looked like Danny DeVito when Danny DeVito played the Penguin from the second Batman movie. And it is kind of like arguing with that guy if you're going to try to tell mainstream media, no, it was real footage. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. So, purportedly from the February 6th earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. What really happened in Turkey, reads part of the post caption, a HAARP-generated earthquake. It was shared more than 500 times in less than a week. Oh no! 500 people thought outside of the matrix. Look out! Our rating false. Did you have any doubt USA Today would say our rating? like they're counting on people not having discernment, which I think is funny. But what are you going to do? So their ratings fall. The earthquakes occurred naturally in a well-known fault zone, seismologists said. Yeah, well, isn't part of the whole conspiracy is that they can excite faults with HAARP? So they just didn't say anything. So nothing to see here. Move along. So I even pulled up the old Wikipedia. And the reason I did it is they've got a very interesting Richter scale chart. And the interesting thing about it is nowhere could I find at all, way down the memory hole. They forget people have memories. Back in the 90s, when like the way to listen to a podcast, we didn't even know it was called a podcast. You'd listen to a radio show on the Real Player. You remember that? Or Divx, right? And it was Jeff Rentz. And Jeff Rentz would talk about that and have guests that talked about that. And somewhere in that brain dump of knowledge in the 90s, all the new conspiracy stuff, it was all new then. I don't know how old y'all are, but when the internet was brand new and you went to Yahoo, there was a search engine, but there were lists, tons of lists, and they would rise to the top to give you an area to look at. And one of the top ones was paranormal. And under paranormal was everything that's called conspiracy theory today, which I think is fascinating that stuff got sequestered. But somewhere in that knowledge dump in the mid to late 90s, there was a story about how the USGS changed the Richter scale, adjusting it down 1 point because they knew bigger earthquakes were coming and they didn't want to alarm people. Yeah, because we're starting to see some of these 9s now, which are technically off the scale. If it was the old Richter scale, it would be somewhere in the 10s. The scale goes all the way up to 9.9 for an extreme earthquake. Well, if you adjust the scale and some people, oh, we had a 5.1 earthquake, don't worry, it's moderate. Well, 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago, a 5 point and up was strong. And now it's just moderate. But don't worry, they got your back. So I did this little search, and this is a quake or bomb. Seismic waves speak the truth, even if nations don't. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back real quick to this USA Today and check out our fact checker, Eleanor McCrary. Hello, Eleanor. How are you today? Do you have a link in your... No, she does not. Nope, nothing to click on. Nothing to click on at all, unless my unit might just be locked up. Let's do the old refresh and see if that helps. Wow, do you think I just got blocked in real time? Like, hey, they're talking about USA Today. Cut him off. I'm gonna talk about you more now. Anything y'all do, even if you didn't do it, all right, after COVID, all bets are off. Everyone knows you lied to us. No one's putting up with this bird flu crap. Experts say, I unsubscribed from a guy this morning on Twitter who was like in the conservative movement or whatever, right? And he's regular interviewed Rashim something. And he just could not stop pushing what I think was propaganda. And so I'm just like, you know what? Tough took us, buddy. I'm not accepting another pandemic. Neither should you. So let's check out Eleanor McCreary. Ooh. See, it did open up if I refreshed. Minor support for my hypotheses that I just got cut off just for talking about USA Today. Is the AI that big? Are the algorithms that gnarly? I'm using the Opera browser. Please reach out and tell me if I'm doing wrong. I know I should probably be using the Brave browser, but sometimes the Brave browser is a little bit wonky, even more so than the Opera browser. So Eleanor McCreary is a native of St. Louis, Missouri, and is the Metro government reporter for the Courier Journal. You could tell she's really qualified to find out whether or not a ultra low frequency EMF pulse aimed at a fault is going to be real or not. Okay. She's got a master's. She recently received a master's degree in investigative and data journalism. Okay. So she's been approved by the gatekeepers to investigate as a journalist. But then, so why was her article like 2 paragraphs long there, Brainwaves? Before working at USA Today as a climate fact check fellow, Eleanor worked at the Courier Journal as a news intern. So what? She's like 25? What's going on here? Let's zoom into that picture and see. Yeah, you can't really tell. Kind of looks, like maybe Laura Loomer wannabe is what I'm thinking. So, okay, Eleanor, nice shot there, Miss McCreary. I really appreciate that. And you can see the destruction. Now, let's see what that earthquake was. It was a devastating 7.8. So by the old Richter scale, that would have been 8.8, which would have been like massively alarming. And yeah, that's the footage from USA Today. That's how they decided to cover it, is show you drone footage and say, nothing to see here. No way that was a weapon. So let's see here. Okay, from EOS.org, which I'm not familiar with at all. Quake or bomb, seismic waves speak the truth, even if nations don't, is this article. And when the earth rumbles and no one knows why, seismologists can analyze the seismic event's waveforms to determine whether a hidden explosion or an earthquake caused the shaking. Well, I think the key word there is seismologist. And then the first question to ask is, well, who do they work for? Is it independent? Do they have tenure at a university that cannot be taken away? Like John E. Mack had tenure that could not be taken away when he wrote his books about the aerial school alien abductions, and his entire research into the alien abduction thing. They grilled him, they threatened him, but they couldn't do anything because he had tenure. So if we have a good tenured geology professor that could come out and say, oh, okay, that really was an earthquake, sure. But if you're going to, another great term they like to use, experts, right? Experts. Because clearly you're not one, right? That's the implication. Or the implication is that you can't do your own research, so just believe us. Don't ask questions, stupid. It's kind of what they're saying. So last week, this is in 15 January 2016. So it's nice to know the internet doesn't completely wipe everything away. Last week, North Korea tested what it claimed to be a hydrogen bomb. East Coast. USGS recorded the subsequent seismic event as having a 5.1 magnitude, which is much lower than would be expected from such a powerful weapon. That's an interesting that's very beguiling in and of itself. Okay. A H-bomb test will give you a greater than a 5.1 magnitude Richter scale. And as we see here, that's moderate. So they're claiming a H-bomb, a nuclear event, would be 6 to 9. And then when you subtract the 1 from the USGS recalibration of the Richter scale, is what that means is an H-bomb can cause a strong earthquake, 6 and up. So bullshit layer upon bullshit, 7-layer dip of bullshit. Here's your Dorito. Shut up. Listen to what we said. Vote for Biden. Oh, by the way, yeah. There you go. Had to up my chair, show off my shirt, the FJB Let's Go Brandon shirt. Just in case anybody was wondering, because I did criticize Trump a bit for some key things, but there's really no way you can't vote for the guy in light of everything. And I even got really annoyed at Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz yesterday because I saw a clip where they went into, they're real slick. They're real slick. Okay. And there's no way, maybe there is a way, it was a real conversation, but it seemed like it was premeditated and planned because Trump's been doing good. So you get the coolest guy in the planet, coolest guy in America with 300 million followers? Like cult, right? Not saying I don't listen to Joe Rogan sometimes. I really appreciate when, he interviews a guy like Huberman or maybe somebody about the younger Dryas. There's some cool stuff. But then he'll get these AI kind of nut jobs and these human transhumanist type people. Kurzweil, total lunatic. And Joe's like, oh yeah, well that's why we're here. Okay. So I thought I'd wear the shirt to set that straight. I am definitely going to have to vote for Trump. Literally the lesser of two evils. And then him saying he's friends with Z. How do you say that? I don't know. I don't want to know how. I guess I know. There's some really great Chinese people that I've met over the years. Sholin, I went to college with this guy named Sholin, and he was awesome. Good artist too. So I think when they start messing with the data, and just to close my last point, the thing about Rogan and Coco doing that is that they're kind of hitting him when he's down. Like he just had these kind of victories and he became a multi-billionaire, and that Lizzo kind of lady up there that was prosecuting him. And, I don't even know her name, but I don't even know what Lizzo is. I thought Lizzo was a comedian and I found out she's a singer. I'm sorry. I've never heard her music and I probably don't want to see her perform, but there was that one woman that was kind of large. She got trim at Adele. She's got a great voice. So I don't know what Lizzo sounds like because, again, I thought she was a comedian. But what I'm saying is the timing of the Rogan, Joey Coco Diaz criticism of Trump, I think was very strategic and kind of proves that they're still Hollywood, man, And then I know people that have this woman. Here's a good idea about how Joe, maybe he's not. Maybe they're not doing it consciously and they're just so Hollywood. It's just like, well, yeah, okay, right. And they hear it so much that it just gets in you and infects you. But I know a woman who every year, her and her two sisters vacation somewhere together. And they live on Pensacola Beach. All right. At least the one woman does. I don't know where her sisters live, and if you live in Pensacola, you're kind of, your weekends, you got beaches, you got right. It's nice here. It's not, people come here to vacation. Okay. So these women went to Austin about 2 years ago and said they're never going back. Oh, we had to step over bums. We almost got robbed, blah, 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 blah. And Joe's like, oh yeah, Austin's great. Best people in the world. Okay, if you have a couple 100 million and you ought to see the house that he bought on what's the name of that river? I forget. But there's Ladybird Lake, which the river flows into it and it's just this lake at Austin, which it's really pleasant down there. I get that. I've gone there to ride my bike and to take a picture next to the Stevie Ray Vaughan Memorial that's right on Ladybird Lake, which of all the things that never got renamed, okay, you want to tear down statues? How about renaming Ladybird Lake to, I don't know, Liberty Lake or something? Not LBJ's wife, who was both of them massive racists, and Eartha Kitt was this beautiful black woman that used to play Catwoman, and she was an actress, and she got blackballed by a bad meeting with Lady Bird. That she tells the story, and she had to move to France. She couldn't get any work at all in the United States. France, she was a star, you know, so God bless them. A lot of great things to like about France. Not Macron, the people, the culture, essentially the spreading of civilization, right? Just everyone's just so civilized there, at least, you know, one would think. So all that to say this, that if you're bad-mouthing Trump on your big giant podcast, it's suspicious, okay? At this point, right, when all else failed, hey, let's get the coolest guy in the world to badmouth Trump. All right. You know, I guess if you have enough, I don't know. It's hard for me to just think he's dumb. And he said he's not smart, but I know that's not true because he's way too sharp to be that way. And I'm also wondering too, if there's a system where, like, if you're a star and you say the right thing, that like the next day there's a briefcase of money on your porch. No questions asked. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know how it works. And I have no idea why Alex Jones is still enamored with that guy. Granted, those podcasts, I mean, he's got that, and I've heard some of his comedy, and he's really good at that. But whatever. Let's go ahead and move on. Get back to the point. Boy, I just did a 12-minute rant. That's how much they annoyed me. Oh, yeah? Well, I got a camera too, buttholes. It's kind of how I feel. It's, you know, but I really want to know why would you align? Here, I'll close it with this. If Joe or Coco hears this and all their fans want to hate me, that's fine. I don't care. But the point is, if they did it purposefully, why would you want to align yourself with, let's face it, the same people that killed JFK? And do you really think you're that special to where when they're not needing you anymore that you're going to be around? No. It's a user crowd, man. They're not going to keep y'all around. So maybe Trump did some stupid things. All right. I called him out for the Z thing. Say, oh, I'm friends with Z, and then bragging about warp speed. Give me a break. Dude, shut up about that. Did someone, hey, I'll bet you $1 million if you say Z and you're friends with Z, you'll still be right. Was it a bet? I don't know. It just, I don't know what it is. So this is from 2016, and they go on to explain about how P waves make dirt move up, and they get really into it. And bigger interior waves suggest an explosion. So that's a piece of data that we could try to find out whether or not something is a man-made or induced earthquake, or in fact the natural fault line, because it happens all the time. So, and they're even saying that seismology alone can't determine what type of bomb detonated. Okay. Once scientists know an underground explosion or bomb test occurred, and they know the magnitude of the seismic event it caused, they can calculate how big of an explosive force caused that quake. The latest test, registering 5.1, most likely falls below the magnitude a hydrogen bomb would produce, said Brian Stump, a seismologist at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. Okay. But Stump said drawing a firm conclusion concerning what type of bomb was detonated requires a radionuclide measurement that specifically designed aircraft can make. Some news media outlets reported that the U.S. Air Force planes will sample the air near the North Korean test area to determine what radioactive material, if any, was leaked out of the underground blast site. Okay. So I'm sure you've heard the terror tale of perhaps an entire East Coast tidal wave happening if a certain ledge out by is it the Canary Islands? I'm not sure. Somewhere out off the tip of Africa or something. One of those islands, maybe off of Portugal. I don't know. It's a little bit tough to wrap your head around thinking about tropical islands in the Atlantic, even though we have the Caribbean off of, the West Indies and all that off of tip of Florida, but kind of a little bit more equal to like the Azores and stuff is a little bit northern, but very tropical. It's a little bit daunting to think about. And the theory is that there's a ledge down there that someone could nuke or they have nuclear tipped torpedoes, which that's got to be a nightmare. But if you do that, and apparently the land that falls and the ledge and then makes the tidal wave and then millions of people die on the East Coast. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'd laugh my ass off if it just petered out too. And then years ago, Daytona Beach got hit by a massive rogue wave, and a guy that was out boating that day said that about a 20-foot roller went over, his boat went over like a 20-foot roller. And that was when the internet was still new. And so there's no video. Nobody had digital cameras back then. Or I think that the footage was from a closed circuit TV on a hotel. And you could just see all the, just the massive amounts of water pushing cars around and down the streets and everything. So here, back to our subject line, earthquake weapons. How Assad oh, this is a little different. Well, this is another thing. There was the disaster, and then, let's see. They're thinking he aggravated the human catastrophe. Yeah, everybody knows that. You got dictators that no one's going to let a good disaster go to waste. Anytime there's a crisis at all, oh, look, this is happening. Let's make more laws and make more, right? It's sad. Now, here's the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. And they got a little fact here. Can we use explosives to cause small earthquakes in order to prevent having large ones? No. Even huge amounts of explosives almost never cause even small earthquakes, and it would take hundreds and thousands of small earthquakes to equal one large one, even if it could be done. In addition, we wouldn't have any control over the size of the earthquake being created if it worked, since small and large earthquakes all start out in exactly the same way. It's just not physically possible. And then there's another article under it. Can nuclear explosions cause earthquakes? A nuclear explosion can cause an earthquake. Right? Explosions can't, but nuclear explosions can. So there's your government at work for you. Thanks for taxing us even more. Okay, so a nuclear explosion can cause an earthquake and even an aftershock sequence. However, earthquakes induced by explosions have been much smaller than the explosion, and the aftershock sequence produces fewer and smaller aftershocks than a similar sized earthquake. Not all explosions have caused earthquakes. Yeah, they want to re-emphasize that. So again, Darren Beattie talked about a gun, which to me, an earthquake gun is what his question was. So to me, that implies some projected energy, like HAARP, maybe. All right. And here's another one from Reveal magazine. Environment, oil, and mining. Man-made earthquakes, fact or fiction. And let's see. This is from Ariane Wu and Michael Corey. Okay. Let's see who this lady is. Series producer, multimedia. Ariane Wu is a series producer for the Center for Investigative Reporting. She is passionate about discovering new ways of telling stories visually and through sound. She was previously a Fulbright scholar based in Beijing, as well as a new media fellow at the Asia Society. Ariane holds a bachelor's degree in film studies and political science from UC Berkeley. So yeah, you really want to find out what this lady thinks about earthquakes. She's got the not. And then Michael Corey is a former senior data editor. He led a team of data journalists who seek to distill large data sets into compelling and easily understandable stories using the tools of journalism, statistics, and programming. His specialties include mapping the U.S.-Mexico border. That'd be a good job today. Scientific data and working with remote sensing. Corey's work has been honored with an Online Journalism Award, an Emmy Award, a Polk Award, an IRE Medal, and other national awards. He previously worked for the Des Moines Register and graduated from Drake University. All right. So he sounds a little more qualified, but still, if he's been to all those award shows, sounds like the whole entertainment thing's hobnobbing with people that would not like this shirt that I'm wearing. So let's see what they have to say. Scientists have known for a long time that humans can cause earthquakes, especially when we mess around with underground faults. Really? Scientists have known that? Because they don't seem to be knowing that at the USGS. Unless it's nuclear. The most dramatic example of this now can be found in the American Midwest. Oklahoma has always had earthquakes, but they used to be rather rare. About 1 or 2 a year that people could feel. Oh, let's see when this was written. 2015. This is the big fracking controversy where some people claim that fracking may cause earthquakes because you're changing the pressure underground. That sounds a lot more consistent than the USGS saying, oh yeah, explosions don't cause earthquakes, but nuclear ones do. The seismology community is pretty unified in concluding that the big increase in earthquakes in Oklahoma comes from injecting wastewater brought up by oil and gas exploration back into the earth. Oklahoma has about 3,200 wastewater disposal wells. Vast majority aren't likely to cause problems with earthquakes. The problems start when the wells are used to dispose of wastewater near pre-existing fault lines. When wastewater disposal wells are drilled deep enough, they may come into contact with a layer of granite rock called the basement. That basement rock is where the faults are. So if water is ejected in the wrong place, it changes the pressure on the fault. It's high pressure too. Some of these faults have been dormant for millions of years until the injection triggers them. And the interesting piece of data that I heard about fracking and the big mistake that they're making sometimes, not saying don't frack, just saying be careful while you're doing it, because this high pressure injection into the soil sometimes blows aquifers out that have taken millions of years to form. And then when you go to pull your water up, there's all kinds of crap in it. When I lived in San Antonio, they used the Edwards aquifer, and I stopped buying expensive coffee machines because the water was so calcified and it was hard water and there's so much stuff in it that it would just calcify anything that touched water all the time. Yeah, I had to change my shower head once a year. It was insane. And on water filtration, you basically half whatever the recommendation was for, because it would just clog and not work anymore. So this is pretty interesting. So if this simple technology of pumping high pressure fluids into what they call the basement where the faults exist, then that sounds like if you wanted to, you could use that as a weapon. And maybe it's not even a gun like HAARP or something. Maybe you get some goons to rent some space in an industrial complex in Taiwan, maybe with a basement, and maybe you start drilling, and maybe you just start pumping that crap down there and let it run, and you know, you got the science all down to the minute, and you're out of there. And then when you leave, that thing still, maybe that's one of the ways they're doing it. Okay. Forbes. Good old Forbes, right? Steve Forbes. Remember when he ran for president? Would he have been really worse than any of the other goon squad people out there now? Probably not. He's pro-business. So probably would have been a lot better than some of these goon squads. So Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine is the name of the article. January 7th, 2020 by David Bresson, senior contributor. Let's check him out. If we can we check him out? Oh, here we go. So, all right. Boy, they're really wanting to sell me some crap. All right. David Bresson. I'm a freelance geologist working mostly in the Eastern Alps. I graduated in 2007 with a project studying how permafrost, that's frozen soil. Don't you love that? I just figure you're too dumb to know what permafrost is maybe some people are, is reacting to the more visible recent changes of the alpine environment. Studying, therefore, old maps, photographs, and reports, I became interested in the history of geology and how early geologists figured out how the Earth works. Blogging about it in my spare time, living in one of the classic areas of early geological research, I combined field trips with the historic maps, figures, and research done there. But geology is more than historic or local science, as geological forces shaped and still influence history worldwide. Okay, that sounds interesting. Let's see how independent he is. All right. Picture of Nikola Tesla there. And all right, here we go. Nikola Tesla is today famous for his work on electricity and energy. He developed the alternating current. We know that. Maybe the more enigmatic parts of his personality make him such an interesting subject for conspiracists. Oh, that's a fancy way of calling somebody a conspiracy theorist, a conspiracist. Tesla is credited to have worked on unknown energy sources to be contacted by UFOs, caused the Tunguska explosion by a death ray, and even worked on an earthquake generator. In 1896, Tesla was working on oscillations to be used for energy transfer. The idea was to create a steam-powered oscillator able to create various frequencies. If the frequency matched the resonance frequency, a receiving device should transform the mechanical oscillations back into electrical current. Okay, and there's a diagram of this device. Very, very fascinating. And there's a lot of amazing speculation about what the world would be like today if we would have went with Tesla versus our copper wire lines. And one of the interesting things about that wireless energy that he wanted to use is a guy who I think is pretty hardcore discredited, the UFO guy that said he was at Bob Lazar when he was interviewed on Joe Rogan. He goes, oh yeah, I got a migraine. Let me have some more whiskey. Hey, I've had migraines, and let me tell you something. You ain't going near alcohol if you got a migraine. It's going to hurt. Okay? You want no part of the dehydrating qualities of alcohol. I think one shot would maybe even make you pass out. It would be so painful. But I just don't believe that guy and his little filmmaker, little buddy, Jeremy Corbell. I don't believe either one of those. Anyway, and we can maybe do a whole show about that someday. So in 1897, the device was ready, and in 1898, he supposedly managed to oscillate his laboratory at 48 East Houston Street in New York, enough that alarmed neighbors called the police and ambulance, fearing an earthquake was happening. Tesla later explained this principle to a reporter, Alan L. Besson's son? Okay. Maybe they meant Benson, and just that's a typo. Who published in February 1912 an article about Tesla's resonator in the World Today magazine. Okay. We'll explore that next. He put his little vibrator in his coat pocket and went out to hunt a half-erected steel building down in the Wall Street district. He found one, 10 stories of steel framework without brick or stone laid around it. He clamped the vibrator onto one of the beams and fussed with the adjustment until he got it. Tesla said finally the structure began to creak and weave, and the steel workers came to the ground panic-stricken, believing there had been an earthquake. Police were called out. See, this guy, police was called out. I corrected that in real time in my head. All right. Maybe proofread. Take an English class or something. Tesla put, let's see where I was. And with the same vibrator, he could have dropped the Brooklyn Bridge into the East River in less than an hour. Okay. They're saying 10 minutes more and he could have dropped that building. All right. Tesla imagined using the waves generated by his invention for peaceful applications. One device could transform electricity into vibrations. Tesla would then use the rocks in the underground to send the vibrations to a second device. The receiving device could pick up the vibrations and transform the oscillations into electricity. That totally makes sense. And maybe that's what he meant by his wireless electrical technology. There again, discrediting Bob Lazar, because he's like, oh yeah, well, if you broadcast that energy out, there'd be static electricity and you wouldn't be able to touch metal. And okay, I already don't believe you for the UFOs. Don't try to get technical with me about why Tesla, who clearly was one of the most censored scientists in the world ever, don't tell me some cockamamie idea about why it didn't work. Okay. So Tesla imagined using smaller devices to relieve energy from the earth, in this case to prevent earthquakes. However, the telegeodynamic system by Tesla never managed to get beyond the prototype. The device was, in reality, not powerful enough to send energy far enough. Dampening of the oscillations by structures and the underground was far too strong. Another idea of Tesla was more successful. He managed using the oscillations generated by his device to prospect the underground. Waves sent into the underground could be reflected. Yeah, that's called sonar. We do that today, and that's, I don't know if you ever worked offshore, but if you do, every once in a while you'll see a geologist boat and they're towing something, and what they're towing is a ground penetrating radar. All right, let's see what this, here's the old, yeah. See, that was this guy didn't proofread because that was Alan L. Benson, not with the weird extra A in there. Ben Nasson. It's not Ben Nasson, it's Benson. Alan L. Benson. Nikola Tesla, dreamer, his 3-day ship to Europe, and his scheme to split the earth. Okay. A lone man dines nightly in the Rose Room at the Waldorf. For 18 years, he has sat at the same table. The table, okay, getting all this. And let's see. This lone man who always dines across from a vacant place has given the world a long series of wonderful inventions. Tesla's system of electric power transmission is used by all the world, and he has a new turbine which he says could drive the Lusitania across the Atlantic at a rate of 50 miles an hour. That means less than 3 days to cross the Atlantic. All right, that's interesting. That was big news back then, I guess. Let's see. It's mostly about speed of this ship. But anyway, it's nice to know that the guy referenced a real article. All right, let's see what we got here. Oh, same article with the device. There we go. Well, we don't have a schematic on what these different parts are. So that's really hard to say. But if he was able to turn electricity into vibrations and then retrieve them, doesn't that imply that they were able to use electricity to create enough vibrations if aimed at a fault to be an earthquake? Is that Darren Beatty's Tesla gun? Okay, here's another one. A Nikola Tesla mechanical oscillator. Nikola Tesla at 79 uses Earth to transmit signals by Earl Sparling. Expects to have 100 million within 2 years. And this was published in the New York World Telegram, 11 July, 1935. Okay. Nikola, let's see. He has discovered the so-called cosmic ray in 1896, at least 5 years before any other scientist took up and 20 years before it became popular among scientists. And he is now convinced that many of these cosmic particles travel 50 times faster than light, some of them 500 times faster. Okay. Needs no commutator. That might be a word that's fallen out of the American lexicon. He has found ways to produce a direct electrical current by induction and without the use of a commutator. I'm going to have, my brother-in-law is an electrician. I'm going to have to ask him what that word means. It might be, it's got a different name now. Which is something experts in electricity have considered impossible for the past 100 years. He has invented the absolutely impossible machine which will impart vibrations to the earth, which, with proper receiving apparatus, can be picked up anywhere on the earth's surface, and that this mysterious machine will allow scientists to explore the deep interior of the earth will enable practical geologists to discover gold, coal, and petroleum, and at the same time will give ships the means to navigate without a compass or sextant. Dr. Tesla has 600 to 700 patents to his name. He invented the rotary field motor and is admittedly the seer and father of all modern electrical development. As has been his custom for 5 years now, he arranged his own birthday party, drank only hot milk, and his part of the celebration and his announcement with the superb certainty of a man who knew what he was talking about, even though none of his guests did. So I could see this happening where a scientist back then would do a show and show you different things. There's like I just got finished watching a series called Taboo. Really, really excellent with Tom Hardy. Is that his name? Tom? Really great actor. And in that, he had to hire a guy to make gunpowder. And when he met the guy was like doing a show. Okay, so it was one of these things where like science, new discoveries were treated almost like entertainment. Okay, this is more of a podcast, but it talks about the earthquake machine. Probably worth a listen. That is at teslapodcast.com. And it's episode 32, titled The Earthquake Machine, if you want to check that out for yourself. And there's some pictures here of a plaque. Nikola Tesla, 1856 to 1943, inventor and scientist. And his quote, "It was the journey of God's own lightning to the benefit of all mankind." Wow. Yeah, he was something else. Oh, that is really cool. There's a, where is this located? In Buffalo, New York. Wow. I never wanted to go to Buffalo, New York, but I might check that out. That's a statue of Nikola Tesla holding a golden lightning bolt. That is just really, really cool. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And if anybody else needs to get memorialized like that, he really did harness lightning. So that's amazing. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on. And this is the actual Tesla oscillator breakdown with a schematic. This is actual PDF I found. Okay. And that can be found at swissenchaft.ch. SWISSENSCHAFT.ch. And let's see, Nikola Tesla's primarily, Tesla was, they always got to give a little history, which we're not doing that here. Tesla, we know enough. Tesla was experimenting with ways to transmit motive power. Right. And then this is the little, oh, he's got cooling vanes and the main piston, the hermetically sealed cavity with the air spring. Head striking the target induces vibrations therein, tuned to be resonant. So that's a whole thing too. Resonance. I don't know if you're able to remember the Ella Fitzgerald Maxell cassette tape commercials where they would, was it Maxell? Memorex. And they would play, she would sing and crack the glass, and then they would play the tape and it would still crack the glass, which just showing you that they had reproduction of that frequency on tape. So really, if you could crack glass, doesn't that imply that the correct frequency could cause an earthquake? AKA earthquake gun. Okay, so I guess if you want to build your own Tesla oscillator, go to that website and see what happens. Okay, another article about Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine, and this is at NikolaTeslaLegend.com. And he takes, okay, again. Boy, they don't, not much on it. Let's see. His imagination takes them to the very top. Tesla patented a steam, okay, just a repeat of other stuff that we shared already. And then here is a white paper, HAL Open Science at hal.science. And this is the high-powered ELF radiation generated by modulated high frequencies. Heating of the ionospheres can cause earthquakes, cyclones, and localized heating by Fran Diaquino. And this was submitted on 14 November 2014. Okay, and that is at hal.science. And yeah, I mean, she is at Maranhão State University in Brazil. All right, which probably means, you know, from Brazil. Whoa, and it gets mathy. I get the basics, but not that. And then, okay. Yeah, this is deep. If somebody wants to, oh, this makes more sense because it has pictures. Okay. So here we have the outer Van Allen belt and the inner Van Allen belt. And then this ELF radiation looks like it's modulated HF heating radiation. Yeah, this is way beyond my pay grade. This is a real science paper. But just the fact that there's all this data that I don't understand because I'm not a geologist, but somebody that does understand it is saying, oh yeah, you can make an earthquake and a cyclone with the right frequencies. All right. Is that a conspiracy theory now? It's not a conspiracy theory. It is a scientific hypothesis. All right. Big difference. All right. And HAARP, the Pentagon's ultimate weapon, whistleblower says. And this is at anomalien.com. ANOMALIEN.com. And let's see what they're saying here. Known as Project HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. The experiment involves the world's largest ionospheric heater, a device designed to zap the skies hundreds of kilometers above the Earth with high-frequency radio waves. Why irradiate the charged particles of the ionosphere when energized by natural processes make up the lovely and famous phenomenon known as the Northern Lights? According to the U.S. Navy and Air Force, co-sponsors of the project, to observe the complex natural variations in the Alaska's ionosphere, officially, right? As well, admit the Pentagon to develop new forms of communication and surveillance technologies to enable the military to send signals to nuclear submarines and to peer deep underground. Even since the existence of HAARP became public, a number of independent researchers warned the operation has a secret agenda, including weather modification, mind control, high-tech military experiments, and triggering earthquakes. Yeah, the mind control aspect is connected to the chemtrails, where Prince quoted that guy that noticed that after there were chemtrails, people would start fighting in his neighborhood, which if you make a grid and you can aim your frequency at it to come down on a certain city, and yeah, we need a riot in Buffalo. Okay. So that's fascinating. And I highly recommend you dig more into that article there. HAARP transmissions may also be used for the detection and monitoring of electromagnetic or plasma phenomenon. Interesting. One of my hypotheses about UFO, and some of them are plasma creatures. Interesting. And can HAARP create earthquakes? Oh, let's see who the author was on that one. On the anomalien.com. That is Jake Carter. And he's a researcher and prolific writer who has been fascinated by science and the unexplained since childhood. He is not afraid to challenge the official narratives. Hey, way to go, Jake Carter, and expose the cover-up and lies that keep us all in the dark. He is always eager to share his findings, insights with readers on Anama Alien. Okay? And can HAARP create earthquakes? And this doesn't have an author. Okay, this is a blog post on abovetopsecret.com where everybody's the author if you choose to participate. So I'm not even going to dig into that. I think it's just going to confirm what we already suspect about Darren Beatty saying, did the CCP use an earthquake gun? You know, maybe it's a gun. Maybe it's guys drilling and pumping high pressure water onto the basement where the faults are. We don't know. But let's go ahead and do my little commercial now for the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. We're brought to you by Bitcoin. If you don't have Bitcoin, what are you waiting for? The halving is happening this month, and after the halving, it's expected to oddly double the price. No, I don't know. But every time there's been a halving, the price of Bitcoin shot up because now the miners don't get as many Bitcoins. They get half as many Bitcoins for mining as they used to. Okay? And understand, Bitcoin is money. I don't even really respond, but there's a guy that's like, oh yeah, it's a scam. It's a Ponzi scheme. Okay. That guy said that at the same time, not getting that the Federal Reserve is actually the Ponzi scheme. It's worse than a Ponzi scheme. All right. They print our money and charge us for every dollar they print, meaning we'll never get rid of the debt because you have to borrow money to pay off that debt. Well, when you borrow that money, there's more debt attached to it. It's ridiculous. Bitcoin is sound money without debt attached. Thank you. And once you have your own private keys, no government can take it from you. It's true. I really appreciate your time today on the Minx Labrada Mysterious World podcast. Once again, I am Minx Labrada. We're going to do this Monday through Friday. Please join us. And don't forget, it's another great day in America. Got to keep a positive attitude. Thanks for your time.